There was a time when olive oil was simple. You grabbed a bottle off the shelf, drizzled it over your food, and trusted that what you were getting was real, rich, full-bodied, and pulled straight from actual olives. No squinting at fine print, no Googling the brand at the grocery store, no wondering if the extra virgin on the label was more of a suggestion than a promise. But those days are gone, because while you've been casually cooking, dipping bread, and finishing your salads, some seriously questionable olive oil brands have flooded the shelves, blending in cheaper oils, bottling old stock, or slapping a fancy Italian-sounding name on something that barely qualifies as food-grade oil. What looks premium on the outside can taste flat, rancid, or worse, completely fake. And here's the problem. You are paying premium prices for something that might not even be what it claims to be. So today we're ranking 8 olive oil brands from worst to best, the ones that waste your money, the ones that are surprisingly decent, and the one that actually tastes like real olive oil is supposed to taste. We're going through the science, the reviews, the business games these brands play, and the red flags you need to watch for next time you're standing in that grocery aisle. Because life is too short to cook with oil that tastes like nothing. So smash that subscribe button because we're about to save you from some seriously disappointing bottles. Number 8, Bertolli Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Bertolli, you know this bottle. You've probably owned this bottle. The green label, the Italian sounding name, the vague promise of Mediterranean authenticity. Founded in Italy back in the 1800s, Bertolli spent over a century building the kind of brand recognition that makes people grab it off the shelf without thinking twice. And that's exactly what they're counting on. Here's the thing, brand recognition and product quality are not the same thing. And Bertolli is one of the most glaring examples of that gap in the entire grocery store. What you're actually pouring into your pan is a multi-country blend. Olives sourced from across the Mediterranean, processed at massive industrial scale, and sitting in distribution warehouses long before it ever reaches your kitchen. The texture is thin and slightly greasy, missing the viscosity that signals a genuinely high-quality extra virgin. The taste? Flat, mildly bitter in a dull, stale kind of way, not the bright, peppery bite you'd get from fresh oil. The aroma, which should be your first signal of quality, is faint at best and borderline rancid on a bad batch. And get this, Bertolli has repeatedly shown up in independent testing as failing to meet actual extra virgin olive oil standards. The oil inside doesn't always match what's on the label. You're paying somewhere between $10 and $15 for what amounts to a bottle of branding. The real kicker is that Bertolli banks entirely on the fact that most consumers don't actually know what good olive oil tastes like. They built a business model around that ignorance, dominating shelf space, leaning on nostalgic Italian imagery, and hoping you never taste anything better. Bottom line, Bertolli looks premium and tastes forgettable. You're paying for the label, not what's inside. Number 7, Pompeian Robust Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Pompeian comes out swinging, bold packaging, aggressive, robust branding, and marketing that promises a big, full-bodied flavor experience. And to be fair, there is something there. More presence than Bertolli, slightly more texture, a bitterness that actually announces itself. But here's where it gets tricky. Bitterness without complexity isn't a good thing. It's like turning up the volume on bad audio. Louder doesn't mean better. Pompeian is an American brand sourcing olives from wherever the price is right. And that global blending approach creates the same problem you see across most mass market oils. Inconsistency. One bottle might taste serviceable. The next one tastes processed and flat. And because harvest dates are rarely clear on the label, you have no real way of knowing how old that oil actually is. Freshness is everything with olive oil. The polyphenols that give it its flavor and health benefits break down over time. And Pompeian's large-scale operation doesn't exactly prioritize getting fresh oil to your shelf quickly. What makes this particularly frustrating is the price point, $9 to $14. Budget-friendly, sure, but when reviewers consistently describe it as strong, but not in a good way, you have to ask what you're actually getting for that money. The business logic here is straightforward. Pompeian targets cost-conscious shoppers who want to feel like they're upgrading from the cheapest bottle on the shelf, while the robust label does psychological heavy lifting that the actual product can't back up. They're banking on you being too busy to read the e-reviews. Bottom line, All intensity, no depth, like turning up the volume on bad audio. Number 6, Filippo Berio extra virgin olive oil. If Bertolli is the brand that coasts on recognition and Pompeian is the one that oversells an inferior product, Filippo Berio is the one that just exists, inoffensively, forgettably, like elevator music in a bottle. Established in Italy in the 1800s, Filippo Berio leans hard into its traditional heritage, and that positioning works on a lot of consumers who associate age with quality. The bottle looks the part, the brand history sound legitimate, and then you taste it. Smooth, sure, slightly oily mouthfeel, mild bitterness. A flavor profile that reviewers consistently describe as safe but boring, and that's being generous. What you don't get is the grassy, fruity brightness that signals genuinely fresh, extra virgin olive oil. No complexity, no peppery finish. No real sense that this came from olives picked at peak ripeness and pressed with care. It's a multi-origin blend processed at industrial scale, and quality varies noticeably between batches. A problem that's almost unavoidable when you're producing at this volume across this many sourcing regions. You're paying $10 to $16 for consistency that isn't even that consistent. The real kicker is that Italian branding is doing a lot of work here that the actual product simply isn't. This is olive oil designed for people who want safe flavor, not bold quality. The food equivalent of choosing beige for every room in your house because at least it won't offend anyone. Bottom line, the definition of average. Not bad enough to throw away, not good enough to remember. Number 5, Colavita Extra Virgin Olive Oil. We're starting to climb out of the disappointment zone, but only slightly. Colavita is a genuine step up from the bottom 3, an Italian family brand with enough care in its production that the result is actually legitimately decent. A medium-bodied texture that feels cleaner than the industrial oils below it. A balanced flavor that doesn't immediately announce itself as either flat or aggressively bitter. A light pepperiness on the finish that at least suggests someone involved in making this product knew what real olive oil is supposed to taste like. Here's the thing though, decent is still a pretty low bar when you're spending $12 to $18 on a bottle. Colavita is a reliable everyday cooking oil. Reviews tend to land in the fine for cooking, not impressive for finishing category, meaning you can saute with it without ruining a dish, but you probably don't want to drizzle it raw over salad and expect something memorable. The freshness is better than Bertolli or Filippo Berio, but the complexity just isn't there. It's a background player, not a star. What makes this particularly telling is the positioning. Colavita knows it's not competing with artisanal producers. It's targeting the home cook who wants something more reliable than the cheapest bottle without the sticker shock of a genuinely premium oil. And for that very specific use case, it works. If this is already saving you from a bad purchase, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. Number 4, California Olive Ranch. Everyday extra virgin. Now we're talking. California Olive Ranch is where the ranking starts to feel like a meaningful separation, where you stop just avoiding bad oil and start actually tasting what's possible. Here's the thing about California Olive Ranch. They do something most of the brands below them refuse to do, which is tell you exactly what's in the bottle and when it was made. Harvest dates are printed clearly on the label. Sourcing information is transparent. And while it's a blend of California-grown olives and some imports, which keeps the price accessible, the resulting flavor profile is noticeably fresher and more alive than anything in the bottom half of this list. The texture is smooth with a slight viscosity. The taste is mildly fruity, balanced, and comes with a real peppery finish, the kind that tickles the back of your throat in a way that tells you the polyphenols are still intact. The aroma is clean and fresh, not faint and stale. Reviews consistently land on words like reliable and noticeably fresher. And at $14 to $20, it hits a price point that feels genuinely fair for what you're getting. The business model works because California Olive Ranch figured out something crucial. Transparency is itself a differentiator in a market full of vague labels and unverifiable claims. When you tell a consumer exactly what's inside and when it was harvested, you immediately separate yourself from every brand that's hiding behind pretty Italian imagery. Bottom line, a safe, solid upgrade from the basics. This is the point where it finally starts tasting like real olive oil. Number 3, Kirkland Signature. Organic extra virgin olive oil, yes, Costco. Stay with me. Kirkland Signature is one of those genuinely surprising products in any category. A private label that consistently punches above its weight class because Costco's business model depends on it. They're not in the business of selling average products under their name. Their membership model means repeat customers who came specifically for value, and delivering a subpar olive oil would be a direct hit to the trust they built. That's not abstract business theory. That's why Kirkland keeps winning. And get this, the Kirkland Signature organic extra virgin olive oil routinely passes independent quality testing. Rich, smooth texture with a slight thickness that signals genuine quality. A balanced, mildly peppery flavor with light nuttiness. Fresh, clean aroma. It performs well as both a cooking oil and a finishing drizzle, which is more than most options on this list can honestly claim. The most impressive part is the price. You're looking at $15 to $22 for a large bottle. Reviewers call it the best value on the market, and they're not wrong. This is an oil that delivers a flavor profile you'd expect from something costing significantly more. The catch is that it varies slightly by batch depending on sourcing, and you're buying from Costco, which means you're getting a large quantity whether you need it or not. But if you go through olive oil at any regular pace, this is an absurdly good deal for the quality level. And if you're finding this ranking useful, hit the like button. It really helps the channel cut through the noise. Number 2, Lucini Premium Select Extra Virgin Olive Oil. This is where olive oil stops being a pantry staple and starts being something you actually think about. Lucini is an artisanal producer that treats quality as the non-negotiable center of what they do, and it shows from the first pour. The texture is velvety and rich, noticeably more substantial than everything below it on this list. The flavor is fruity, complex, and slightly bitter in the right way. The kind of bitterness that signals high polyphenol content and genuine freshness, not staleness or poor processing. And the finish is long and peppery in a way that lingers on the palate, which is exactly what you want from a finishing oil. At $18 to $25, Lucini is priced at the premium end of what most people would casually spend on olive oil, but reviews consistently describe it as restaurant quality, and the complexity of the flavor profile supports that claim. This is an oil you notice. You drizzle it on a piece of good bread, taste it raw, and suddenly understand what the fuss about olive oil is actually about. What makes this particularly satisfying is that Lucini makes no attempt to compete on price. They're targeting food-forward home cooks and people who care about the difference between an ingredient and a great ingredient. The business model is niche, but it works because the product genuinely delivers. Bottom line, this is where olive oil becomes something worth paying attention to. Everything below it suddenly feels like a compromise. Number 1, Cobram Estate Extra Virgin Olive Oil. This is the gold standard. Cobram Estate is an award-winning Australian producer that has built its entire reputation on 3 things: freshness, quality control, and traceability. Single origin, clearly labeled harvest dates, rigorous testing that consistently places them at the top of international blind tastings. This is not marketing language. These are documented, repeatable results. The texture is luxuriously smooth and perfectly balanced, not thin and watery, not heavy and overwhelming. The flavor is bright, grassy, and complex, with a clean spiciness that develops mid-palate and a long, satisfying finish. The aroma is vivid and fresh in a way that stops you mid-pour because you actually want to smell it again. What makes this particularly remarkable is the polyphenol content, genuinely high, which is both a flavor indicator and a marker of real nutritional value. You're not just tasting better, you're actually getting more of what olive oil is biologically supposed to offer. At $20 to $30, it is the most expensive option on this list, and it's worth every cent. Reviewers describe it as a night and day difference from supermarket oils, and after tasting your way through the bottom 7 on this list, you'll understand exactly what they mean. Here's the thing about Cobram Estate. They've succeeded by refusing to compromise. No blending to cut costs, no vague sourcing, no hiding behind Italian branding, just an obsessive commitment to producing olive oil that tastes the way olive oil is supposed to taste. Bottom line, this is what real olive oil tastes like, everything else suddenly feels like a downgrade. So here's what we learned today. The olive oil market is a battlefield between mass production and actual craftsmanship. And the brands doing mass production are very, very good at making you feel like you're getting quality when you're not. Bertolli looks premium and tastes forgettable. Pompeian sounds bold and delivers inconsistency. Filippo Berio banks on Italian imagery to paper over an average product. And they all rely on the same consumer behavior, grabbing the familiar bottle without asking any questions. But once you know what to look for, harvest dates, single origin sourcing, that peppery finish, that fresh grassy aroma, you can't unknow it. And that's the real takeaway here. Don't trust the label. Don't trust the price tag. And definitely don't assume that extra virgin means anything without some additional digging. The phrase has become so widely misused that it functions more as marketing than as a standard. The best olive oil on this list tastes alive, complex, fresh, full of actual character. Cobram Estate proves that when the product is made right, it isn't just an ingredient, it's the thing that makes your food taste like you actually know what you're doing in the kitchen. That difference is real and it's accessible. You don't have to spend $30 every time. Kirkland Signature in number 3 proves that, but you do have to stop grabbing the green bottle out of habit and calling it good. Hit subscribe if this changed how you'll shop for olive oil, and drop a comment telling us which ranking you think we got wrong.